Today we're going to be talking to Tom Spann, the CEO of Brightside. Tom, how are you?
I'm great, Miranda. Nice to be here.
Well, we're really glad to have you and super excited to be diving into the ins and outs of your business.
I'm looking forward to it too.
So just to give our listeners some context going into this, I'd love it if you could give us an overview of what your company does and why it exists.
Sure. So Brightside is a financial care company. We felt financial wellness wasn't working, so we invented financial care. Just to give you a little bit of my story, because I think it's relevant. I was at Accenture for a lot of years, worked in healthcare, and then was recruited to start a company called Accolade. And that was kind of a pioneering healthcare concierge and navigation startup, and IPO'd last year. And a few years before that, I decided I did want to be CEO of a public company and hired a new CEO to optimize that company and take it public. And about a year after that, one of my customers, Sean Levitt at Comcast, came to me and said, I think there's a need that financial stress and poor financial health is costing me at Comcast $250 million a year. And so we just built this company to try to maximize that ROI for employers by trying to make it easy for employees to make and execute good financial decisions, really focused on the 70% of the country that's going paycheck to paycheck.
I mean, I think it's interesting that it's employers looking for a way to optimize the financial well-being of their staffers. And I mean, is that something that's really top of mind of companies nowadays?
It is now. I mean, it's a big impact of the pandemic, and I think also the racial equity and justice movements in this country, right? People got peeks into people's living rooms and homes, and they saw the tremendous burden of stress and anxiety from the pandemic. We've got a mental health crisis in this country, but 72% of all stress is caused by finances. So, getting it, you think about it's the biggest driver of relationship issues, all these other things. And people show up to work for financial security for themselves and their families. And when they don't get it, they disengage. They're 2.2 times more likely to find another job, all those kinds of things. And so I think people were tackling financial wellness before as a check the box kind of thing, but now they're saying, I really do have to do something. This is really costing me money. There's, so much more evidence now that 30% of all healthcare costs in this country are driven by poor financial health, right? The financial stress makes you sick, right? Stress causes all kinds of problems with every system in your body. And then, what I saw at Accolade is it keeps you from getting better. Right, you have this, 40% of the people in this country skip a doctor visit every year because of finances. They defer a schedule, 25% defer a scheduled procedure. People don't take their meds. All these reasons, they wind up in the hospital and costing employers a lot more. Mm-hmm. And if the stat of 40% of the people don't have $400, it's also true even up to 80%. Of families that make between $100,000 and $125,000 a year don't have $2,000 for an emergency, right? So if you've got a $900 car bill or a $3,000 car repair bill, you might miss a day of work or two. It's driving 20 more days of absenteeism. It's driving a whole lot of costs. Not to mention you've got these retirement plans which people aren't contributing to. Most of the country isn't ready for retirement, but it's because they got real problems here and now with their finances. They're living paycheck to paycheck.
So, I mean, how do those conversations even work when an employer decides they're going to make a conscientious decision to put some resources towards financial wellness? How do you guys play into it, and how does that get going?
Well, companies are starting to go at it, and really there's only been sort of two options. One of these financial wellness companies, or the idea of maybe I should just have some education. These wellness companies are very education centric, right? And there's been studies that have shown that education has a 0.01% effect on financial health, and less for people who make lower incomes. What works is delivering education in a very personalized way, bite-sized, because everybody's different. They got different dreams, aspirations, hopes, desires, situations, relationships, all these things. And so knowing that somebody's in a financially stressed problem because their mom stole their car, and so they had to give up their Uber Eats job at night that was paying for daycare. And so now they're staying up with their kids all night so they can go to work at the call center in the morning. Those kinds of, you've got to understand that life context. And then you can find the state subsidy for daycare for that person, reduce their daycare bill from $600 to $150, and then they can start to go back to work. It's those kinds of life complexities, right? The Richard Thaler, the Nobel Prize winning behavioral economist, said, behavioral economists don't think people are stupid. They think life is hard, right? Because people make irrational decisions, and they know that, but it's not. It's because it's hard to do the right things. And so employers are starting to understand that. They are tackling this really with either these financial wellness options, which only are engaging 5% of the population, aren't working, or they're seeing now, coming out of healthcare, I would call them treatments that work. Right. So you see things like earned wage access companies where you can get money that you've already worked and earned, but you can get it before your payday, or you have emergency loan products where they get repaid out of your paycheck that are great alternatives to payday lending, the 400, 500% interest, right? Because they're more credit card interest rates, 25%, or you see the opportunity again being linked to the paycheck to reduce your credit card payments from 25% interest to 12% interest, because again, just automatically coming out of the paycheck reduces that risk for the lender. And you see student loan solutions, right? People doing things with student loans. But the problem with those point solutions are two things. One is they're often driven by people who make money off of those products, so they want you to use more of them. It's a little bit like putting pharmaceuticals on the shelf if you're an employer, right? They treat, they're pain relief for some people, but you really want them used at exactly the right time. You want to give people help as to when to use them. And they're not holistic, right? The right answer for your student loans may be very different if you are sitting with 30 grand in credit card debt, right? There may be other things you can do that are smarter to do first. But the student loan company wants you to maybe refinance a student loan, which may be a terrible decision, by the way, because maybe you're eligible for, you've got government protections on those loans. You may be eligible for a government repayment program or something. So, we just think things need to be highly personalized. So you've got those solutions, and we're coming out and telling people there's actually, a way to do this that's simpler for the employee. You get one place to go for all your financial needs. It's simpler for the employer, and it's resonating really well, particularly in a world where people are so concerned about diversity, equity, inclusion. Right? In a world where blacks have 10% of the net worth of whites, and women are 50% more likely to be under high financial stress than men. And then it causes all these problems, right? Of productivity, healthcare costs, they're sicker, all these things. Then, how do you expect somebody who's black or female to show up as their best selves at work when they're twice as likely to be under high financial stress, right? And if I can relieve that, given the stat I said about they're 2.2 times more likely to turn over if they're under financial stress, then I start to really create an equitable, environment for people to show up as their best selves at work every day and get promoted and get advanced.
Yeah, I have to imagine that, especially during the pandemic, the magnifying glass and the stress, both financial and in home dynamic, has to just be really prominent right now. Is that something that you're seeing in your business?
Yeah. It's really nice to see the market coming our way now. The pandemic had definitely a negative effect. It was a huge distraction. Right? People were just figuring out, how do I get people to work from home, and how do I keep them safe? And but they're now starting to say, okay, these things that cause a lot of behavioral health issues, that cause a lot of stress, that cause anxiety and depression, are solvable. And once we start to say, look, we can do it, right? We're seeing, a 42% reduction in people with subprime credit scores in our populations. That's money in their pockets, right? Because the next time they go for a car loan, it's going to be a lot less expensive. The next time they go for a mortgage, it's going to be less expensive, right? It's just, it's brutally expensive to be poor when you take on, the high interest costs of bad credit plus overdraft fees, minimum balance fees, all that kind of stuff.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, I think that you guys are really hitting on something that, even me as an employee, I wouldn't have ever thought would have existed in that world. How are you kind of bringing awareness to this as even being an option?
Well, our strategy has been, and it's evolving now that we're getting some traction, but, having built Accolade, we very much focused on kind of getting one flagship customer, one big employer, and driving just great value for them, showing the success, proving the results. They get another one, and so forth. And so, we're able to work with a network of employers. I've been in this benefit space for a while. There's benefits consultants that are very helpful to us because they believe in our product and they point us to the employers that maybe are going to be the most innovative and have this and see this need the most. So we kind of do some of that hand-to-hand combat to date. But now that the pandemic is lifting a little bit, at least for a while, and employers are really turning to these kinds of what healthcare people for a long time have called the social determinants of health, right? People know that these financial problems drive a lot of the healthcare costs. We're seeing the need to just really up our marketing. So we've tripled our sales and marketing team. We are launching an upgraded website next week. We've got, and we're doing, a lot of conferences where these benefits executives, CHROs, and diversity, equity, inclusion executives show up. So I'm doing a lot of those kinds of speeches and presentations and just meeting people and trying to understand how they think about this problem and what their needs are as we go.
Is there any type of minimum company size when you're looking at the groups to be working with, or is it, any company with any size of employee?
We're just starting to test employees under 1,000, but generally we're targeted on 1,000 or more. But we think we've got some technology and some tools now that are going to help us go to even much smaller employers than that. So we're open to talking about it, but most of our efforts have been focused on actually 5,000 employees or more.
Wow.
But we've got a fair number of employees in the 500 to 5,000 now.
Is there any regional specific patterns that you're seeing in the companies that are interested?
No, I don't think so. I think everybody sees this problem. It is interesting as we work with national employers, how different cultures are around finances and different levels of financial health. Arizona is pretty typical of a lot of the U.S. or average in a lot of ways, for certainly diverse in terms of, urban and rural and all those kinds of things. To give you an example, we serve people in both Mississippi and Utah. Right. Mm-hmm. And in Mississippi, there's huge demand for these emergency loan products. Right. There's a lot of poor financial health. There's a lot of issues. And in Utah, the same jobs, same kind of workers. The culture, I think, particularly influenced by the Mormon culture, which is very anti-debt, just has an impact. The culture of the state and the communities around Salt Lake City. So you see some regional variations, but they're more on the consumer end. Not so much on employers. Yeah. The bigger variation on employers is, do they have a workforce that all makes over $200,000 a year where this is an issue versus do I have a lot of people making under $100,000 where this is really driving a lot of their costs?
Mm-hmm. Is there any industries, I know that you had mentioned ones that are a little bit more innovative and recognizing this is an issue that are engaging sooner, but are you seeing any industry specific patterns of who's moving forward with your product?
A lot in manufacturing and distribution. Those were frontline workers that were very much needed through this pandemic. People still needed to buy groceries and shoes and all of those kinds of things. And that industry is where we're seeing the most, right? The other interesting thing that's driving our business right now is I think there was a few moments, particularly in the tech world in March of 2020, when people say, well, I literally had people tell me the war for talent is over, right? And, that the money would dry up, millions of tech jobs would go away. And to some extent in places like Silicon Valley, where we've got investors, that happened. But I think what we see more often is, there's clearly return to the war for talent. People are saying, I can't get enough good workers. And it's a lot of these frontline jobs. The other big industry we see right now is healthcare. Hospitals, hospital systems, there's nursing shortages, people, some of these jobs are just less appealing. And so how do I, provide support for people's lives and make them want to stay at their employer?
Yeah, absolutely. And I'd have to imagine at this point, are you guys seeing patterns in retention after implementing your services?
Yeah, so we did a study at one employer and our first employer, and found a 41% reduction in attrition.
Wow.
For people who use Brightside versus people not. Yeah, it's and then you sort of apply that to this other notion of diversity, equity, inclusion. You see that has a big impact on diversity, and then. And we're, looking across our other employers, we're not seeing less than 20% in any of them. Even, healthcare companies where the workers are highly paid. So that war for talent thing and that retention benefit is huge. And it's a few things, right? It's people are going to leave more when they're under financial stress and not providing financial security. They appreciate their employer a lot more when they get a benefit they love. And there is this tie to the paycheck, right? There, in a few clicks on our app, they can start saving out of each paycheck for the next emergency. And, they may have gotten a loan through us that is paid back out of their paycheck. And it's just, I've sort of got some stickiness around that too, I think.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, when I'm thinking about, how most companies are like, let's make our upper employee morale, you're seeing like pizza parties, you're seeing, you guys will get swag that's sent to you, these things that are nice, but they're not fixing the root of people's problems. They're just minor distractions. But, putting a real effort in implementing a service that could actually be life-changing to someone's financial situation, that's going to be what makes people stay.
Yeah. And it's not only their situation, but it's the family, right? Mm-hmm. Healthcare and finance are kitchen table issues, right? Mm-hmm. When you come up big for some family member's health or some family's finances, like that creates loyalty with a spouse or kids. Like, why would you leave this company that did this for us?
Yeah. No, absolutely. And I mean, when we're talking about employer and employee loyalty, I mean, I'd love to know a little bit about your company's culture and how that is.
Yeah, it's, I tell you what we're trying to do. And there's always a gap between what you're trying to do and where you are. But, there's certainly similarity with Accolade, my last company. We were, a top workplace and the culture. If you think about our business, we need to get to know each client we serve here at Brightside and understand their needs and figure out what's in their way and try to help them meet their needs. So that drives our culture, right? It means, first of all, we've got to be client centric, right? I've got two rules in this company. One is you do the right thing for our clients every single time, right? That needs to permeate. What's right for our client is the first question you ask about every decision we make in the company. Second rule is you support each other. And then the third thing isn't so much a rule, because I don't like a long list of rules, but you want to have a growth mindset, right? We're pioneering this category, but we're doing stuff nobody's ever done before. So we've got to learn really fast, right? And we got to try to do big things, but we got to accept failure. And we just got to constantly test and learn. And, it's not important in this company to be right. It's important that we get it right. And so, we've got this very caring culture. I grew up at Accenture. It was a very authoritative culture, right? Because it was kind of built out of an accounting firm. And so it was about expertise, and the more expertise you got, the more you got promoted. And this is all about caring for these clients, right? I tell, we all work for these families that we serve. That's the boss. And then my job and all the other leaders' job is to support the people that are serving those clients directly or building the technology that helps serve those clients directly.
Yep. So, you'd mentioned you growing up with, larger companies and then transitioning to this company. How was that for you, going from a large company to essentially shifting to a startup?
Well, going from Accenture to Accolade was definitely shocking in a few ways. I can't say it was surprising, but I've been a partner for a lot of years, and I was flying first class, and all of a sudden, my first trip with Accolade, I'm in coach in the back row of the airplane in middle seat into the wind. It's like a 5-hour flight to Denver or something. So there's a little bit of that. There's a scrappiness and hands-on that's both, an elation and a joy and an adjustment, right? All of a sudden, I've got to be the guy that fixes the printers or make sure there's enough coat hangers in the closet. But you've got to be willing to roll up your sleeves in a startup. I had a very lucky break at Accenture in that as a new partner, I got the opportunity to propose on some work for a 1-employee pharmaceutical company. And you can imagine a company like Accenture, every partner was more senior than me. I was brand new. So let's give it to the new kid because we don't want to deal with a 1-employee company. But it turned out it was a joint venture between Astra and Merck, and today is AstraZeneca. So, when they were 15 people, we had 15 consultants next to them. And it just was this amazing lesson in what a small group of people trying to do something amazing as opposed to just, a little better can do. And so I kind of got that startup bug. That would be 30 years ago now. It's hard to imagine.
Wow.
But, so when the opportunity to do Accolade came up, it was really, I had that in mind. And I also had that I want to set a good example for my 2 teenage daughters, right? I had 12 and an 18-year-old. And the most important question I asked myself was, what would I want them to do? Mm-hmm. And I want them to do it something that would make more of a difference in the world, where they would grow more and learn more. And not having done a startup really other than that Astra Merck experience before, it turned out to be a great choice. It transformed my life, mostly just philosophically and emotionally. I learned all these families out there are really good people trying to do the right thing for their families. They just need a little help. And it just, seeing how caring the Accolade health assistants were was hugely important. And so that's, going back to your question, that's the kind of culture we were trying to create here, one where it's all about these families we serve. And I think everybody gets that mission. I mean, you can feel it when you talk to Brightsiders that that's what they love the most, is they know they're making a difference in the lives of these families we serve.
Yeah, I'd love to know. I know it's a tough decision, and what would you like your children to do? What is what is the decision that's right for your path of growth? But when someone's thinking about making that transition from maybe being an employee to starting their own business or joining a startup, what advice would you have for them during that decision process?
I think you actually have to care about what you're doing. I think you've got to feel you're trying to do something great. I think most entrepreneurs do that, whether almost no matter what they're doing. I think you've got to feel like you've got the right support network on you. You shouldn't try to do it all by yourself. When I started Accolade, I had just amazing initial investors that had done this before. And that was a great start. And of course, I grabbed a good friend and former colleague who had done the Astra Merck work with me at Accenture. So I wasn't by myself. Maybe don't be by yourself. That's probably good advice. and be honest about the worst case scenario, right? I think sometimes people are afraid to do stuff because they think they're going to wind up broken in the gutter and all that stuff.
Mm-hmm.
I was fortunate having been through the Accenture IPO when I took the Accolade job, but I think the worst case is sometimes I could go back into consulting in another corporate job, and I was still employable, and I think people sometimes don't think that they've got other options. But I'm very much of the mindset of go for it, but just know it's going to be a ridiculous roller coaster, right? I mean, if you think it's like all smooth sailing, I mean, I had 2 years in a row where Standard & Poor's changed their healthcare cost index, and we had to write off 25 to 30% of Accolade's revenue and hand our customers checks back because the savings weren't as high as we had been calculating through the year. Just crazy stuff like that where you're like, oh man. But you just be honest about the data, and if it's working, stick to your guns. I always I think about this a lot in the ups and downs now because somebody explained to me the Stockdale paradox. Have you?
I don't know what that is.
Admiral Stockdale was a prisoner of war in Vietnam, and he said the people that didn't survive are the people who would always say, we'll be out by Christmas. Because, Christmas would come and they wouldn't be out, and then we'll be out by, 4th of July, and it came, and we'll be out by next Christmas. It's like, it may not get better right away, right? But he always had the belief that in the end he would persevere, come out of this and be a better person for it. And I think you get a lot of those things in startups. I mean, the guy who handed me the idea for Brightside, Sean Levitt, passed away on March 12th last year, suddenly of a heart attack. And that was a huge setback. He's basically my co-founder, or one of my co-founders. And the guy whose idea it was, the guy who was my customer, and it led to another series of setbacks after that. And it just, but I believed in the idea, and I believed we had seen enough evidence that it was working that I stuck with it. And so did the team. I mean, the leadership team is intact and continues to grow, and none of our leadership team left. And I think that's amazing.
Well, I think that that's really exciting, and I know that our listeners would love to know more about how they can learn more about the business and maybe what's next for the new coming year with you guys.
Sure. So they can always find us at gobrightside.com. They can find me on LinkedIn or Twitter and keep up with what we're doing. We're growing and hiring in Chandler. And so we're always anxious to understand where the top talent is in technology, and also people who care about personal finance and want to care for other people. So come visit our website and our recruiting page. We have plenty of jobs open. We just we're about to launch a Fortune 500 company in July 1. So that's imminent. And then the month after that, we're launching a pilot at one of the 10 largest employers in the United States. So we're, and we've just hired a new head of sales, a new head of marketing, and, we believe enough in our results right now that we're very focused on growth. And because through that we'll learn, and the more we learn about how to do this, the farther ahead we'll be of all the people who will inevitably copy us, right? People copy. Yeah, I mean, they do, right? If someone's working, they're going to try to do it. They'll first say they do it, and then they'll try to do it, and then they'll learn how hard it is. But that head start is a big advantage, but we waste it if we don't learn as quickly as possible. So that's why that's an important part of our culture.
Absolutely. I mean, always looking to grow and try new things while putting the customer first, I think is going to do you guys very well in the future.
Thanks. Yeah, we see a world, Miranda, where someday this is their employer or some benefit like Brightside, it won't always be us. We won't have 100% market share 10 years from now. But I saw this with Accolade, and I see it happening with Brightside, right? Why would you make a financial decision without engaging Brightside first, right? Because we can save you a lot of time. We can offer you products. I mean, we get referral fees for some of these products, but we don't keep it. We give it to the employee who buys the product, takes the loan. If you go to Credit Karma and get a financial product, they make a lot of money off of it. We don't make any money off of that. We give it to the employee. So it's that kind of, we're always on the side of the employee. Like, why would you navigate the confusing world of finance on your own? So we imagine someday everybody's going to have something like this. And we're going to be the front door to financial services in the country. So that's kind of cool.
Yeah, I mean, I think you will. When I'm hearing about this and I'm thinking about it, I'm thinking about past companies that I've worked at, and having gone through college myself, being like, man, like that would have been much easier.
Yeah, it's fun. The world didn't beat down the door of Accolade for a long time. And, I was CEO for 9 years before I thought it was accepted enough in the market that I could step down. And but I never talk to anybody who says this is a terrible idea, right? It's like people know that people struggle with the finances and the financial service system, need real solutions for that, and they know now more than ever it's costing employers a lot of money. So
yeah, employers' money, companies' time, and
right.
Financial stress is never good for employees.
Right, but it creates stress on me because I'm leading a good idea, so it's like I can't screw it up, right? It's like if it doesn't work, it's my fault because it definitely works. It's just a matter of making the company the leader in achieving our vision.
Well, I think that you are off to an amazing start, and I am looking forward to watching your company grow, and I'll definitely be watching closely. And thank you so much for your time, and I am definitely going to keep my eye on Brightside.
Oh, thanks, Miranda. Really appreciate enjoying the conversation.